At 8:30 on a random weekday morning, a small group of people sit around a polished table. Coffee, notepads, calm voices. No factories shut down in that room. No one gets fired in that room. And yet, before lunch, millions of jobs around the world will quietly become safer or more fragile. Not because of anything workers did, but because of a few numbers. Most people never see those numbers. They flash on a screen. They move by 0.25%, and then they disappear. But months later, a hiring freeze happens. A startup cancels expansion. A construction project never starts. Someone you know doesn't get a call back. This is how interest rates actually work, not in theory, in real life. And right now, they matter more than most people realize. Because we're living in a moment where those small numbers are being treated like blunt instruments, and the economy is feeling it. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Jobs are not mainly controlled by hard work, innovation, or even demand. They're controlled by the price of money. And the price of money is set by a handful of rate decisions. Let's slow this down. Imagine money not as cash, but as oxygen. Every business needs it to survive, to hire, to expand, to take risks. Interest rates are the thickness of that oxygen. When rates are low, money feels light, easy to breathe. When rates rise, money gets heavy. Breathing takes effort. No announcement says jobs will be lost, but the air quietly changes. This matters right now because for over a decade, money was almost free. After the 2008 crisis, rates were pushed near zero. Then after 2020, they went even lower, even faster. Cheap money became normal. Companies didn't just borrow to grow, they borrowed to exist. Entire business models were built on the assumption that borrowing would always be easy, that refinancing would always be cheap, that tomorrow's money would cost the same as today's. Then inflation showed up, and suddenly those calm rooms started raising rates fast. Not by huge amounts, 0.5% here, another quarter there, small numbers, but stacked together, they changed everything. To understand how those numbers control jobs, you have to follow the chain reaction. Start with the simplest rule in finance. Higher interest rates make borrowing more expensive. That sounds boring. It's not. Because almost every job depends on borrowed money at some point. When a company hires you, it's making a bet, not just on your skills, but on future cash flow. Payroll is a promise about the future, and that future is usually financed. A company doesn't need to be drowning in debt for this to matter. Even healthy businesses rely on credit lines, short-term loans, revolving facilities, commercial paper. These are not exotic tools. They're the plumbing of modern business. When rates rise, that plumbing starts to creak. The first thing that happens is subtle. Finance teams update spreadsheets. Loan renewals get more expensive. Interest expenses tick up. No one panics yet. Then comes the second effect. New projects stop penciling out. That warehouse expansion? Too expensive to finance now. That new product line? The return isn't high enough anymore. Hiring is technically still possible, but it feels risky. So hiring postings slow. Not layoffs, just hesitation. This is how job losses begin, with pauses. Then comes the third effect, refinancing. This is where the quiet math turns brutal. Many companies don't repay loans, they roll them over. They assume that when debt matures, they'll refinance at similar rates. When rates jump, that assumption breaks. A loan that cost 2% now costs 6% or 7% or more. That difference doesn't sound dramatic until you apply it to millions or billions. Interest expense explodes. Suddenly, profits shrink. Cash buffers disappear. Boards start asking uncomfortable questions. And this is where jobs enter the room, because payroll is one of the few costs that can be adjusted quickly. Not machinery, not long-term contracts, people. Now here's the part most explanations skip. Interest rates don't just affect weak companies, they hit the strongest ones first. Why? Because the strongest companies borrow the most. They use debt strategically, to scale, to optimize, to arbitrage time. When money was cheap, that strategy worked beautifully. When money gets expensive, leverage turns from a trap into a trap. So even profitable firms pull back, not because they're failing, but because the math changed. This is the hidden mechanism. Interest rates don't cause layoffs by crushing demand overnight. They do it by changing which risks are acceptable. A hiring decision is a risk decision, and interest rates define the risk-free alternative. When interest rates are near zero, doing nothing is expensive. Cash earns nothing, so companies are pushed to invest, to hire, to expand. When rates rise, suddenly doing nothing pays. You can park money in safe assets and earn a return. That changes behavior. Why hire aggressively when you can earn 5% doing almost nothing? That question echoes across boardrooms. This is where the hidden irony appears. Raising rates is supposed to cool inflation without killing jobs, a soft landing. But the system doesn't adjust evenly. Some sectors feel it immediately. Construction, startups, manufacturing, anything capital-intensive. Other sectors lag until they don't. And because jobs are tied together, the slowdown spreads. A developer stops building, suppliers lose orders, logistics slows, retail demand weakens. No single decision causes the damage, it's the accumulation. This is why job losses always feel sudden to the public, but slow to the people inside the system. By the time layoffs make headlines, the interest rate decision that caused them is months old. Now zoom out. Who sets these numbers? Central banks. They don't target jobs directly. They target inflation and stability. But jobs are the transmission mechanism. This is the uncomfortable part. To control prices, the system is designed to reduce labor demand, not explicitly, but mechanically. Higher rates are meant to slow hiring, lower wage pressure, reduce spending. That's not a conspiracy, it's the model. And it assumes the pain will be tolerable. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. The hype says interest rates are precise tools, delicate adjustments. The reality is they're blunt. They hit borrowers harder than savers, small firms harder than giants, new workers harder than established ones, and they don't ask permission. Another overlooked detail, timing. Interest rates work with a delay, which means decisions today are based on data from yesterday, and effects show up tomorrow. That's dangerous, because by the time job losses appear, rates may already be too high or not enough. The system is always steering by the rear-view mirror. This is why policy mistakes are so common and why jobs get caught in the middle. Now think about scale. A single quarter-point increase can translate into billions in additional interest costs across the economy. Billions that don't go to wages or hiring or investment. They go to servicing existing debt, money flowing backward instead of forward. That's how a few numbers control millions of jobs, not through intention, through structure. And here's the quiet risk most people miss. The global economy is more indebted than ever. Corporate debt, government debt, household debt. High rates don't just slow growth, they expose fragility. Every rate hike is a stress test. Some businesses pass, others don't. Jobs are the visible casualties of invisible balance sheets. The final irony?
When rates eventually fall again, jobs don't instantly come back. Trust takes longer to rebuild than spreadsheets. Companies remember the pain. They hire cautiously. They automate more. They keep buffers, which means the labor market never quite returns to the old normal. So the next time you hear about a small rate change, don't think of it as abstract. Think of it as a signal, a shift in the price of risk, a recalculation of the future. And ask yourself one question. If a few people adjusting a few numbers can quietly reshape millions of lives, how stable does that system really feel?